There's a lot to discuss about Ethereum right now, from the historic approval of its spot ETFs last year, the explosive growth of its Layer 2 ecosystem, to the major upgrade kicking off 2025 that has ETH enthusiasts hopeful for a big year. While ETH has been heavily criticized for its underperformance to Bitcoin in 2024, are the tides turning soon? Well, let's dive right into it. What better place to start than Ethereum's Layer 2 ecosystem? The first Layer 2 rolled out back in 2021, and now in 2025, they've become a core part of Ethereum's ecosystem. As of now, the total value locked across Ethereum Layer 2s has climbed past 55 billion, with 2024 being the year that really drove explosive growth. This growth in value has gone hand in hand with the sheer number of Layer 2 projects popping up, and there are now dozens of them. Among these, Arbitrum, Base, and Optimism lead the pack, making up over half of the total value locked in the space. To support this growth, Ethereum has been introducing key upgrades like last year's Denken upgrade, which improved data availability, making Layer 2 faster, cheaper, and more efficient. And there are even more Layer 2 related improvements in the pipeline set to be included in future upgrades. Even with all this progress, Ethereum hasn't escaped FUD, especially around its reliance on these Layer 2 solutions. Critics say these Layer 2s fragment liquidity across multiple networks, which can weaken Ethereum's position in DeFi. On top of that, many of them rely on centralized sequencers to process transactions, raising concerns about security or censorship. That said, Ethereum supporters argue the benefits outweigh some of these issues in that Layer 2s make transactions cheaper and faster while still settling on Ethereum, keeping the main chain in demand for block space and gas fees. In other news, the SEC finally approved several spot Ethereum ETFs last year, just a few months after giving the green light to spot Bitcoin ETFs. This was a huge milestone, especially considering the SEC had spent over a decade rejecting spot Bitcoin ETF applications. These Ethereum ETFs started going live in July. However, inflows stalled within a week of its launch and were overshadowed by Bitcoin's exceptional ETF performance. To drive sentiment lower, over 2024, Ethereum's price has underperformed that of Bitcoin, which had gone on an absolute tear and breached the coveted $100,000 mark. But Ethereum enthusiasts argue that this isn't unusual. Historically, Ethereum tends to shine later in market cycles when attention shifts from Bitcoin to altcoins. And as the largest altcoin, Ethereum is often the biggest beneficiary when that happens. Despite these sentiments, some remain optimistic, with plenty to look forward to this year. Most notably, the Pectra upgrade, which may already be live by the time that you're watching this. This upgrade is set to improve the network's scalability, user experience, and security, laying the groundwork for even more progress in the future. One of the highlights is EIP 7702, which introduces the sponsorship feature that allows you to use tokens other than ETH to pay for gas. It achieves this by allowing someone else, like a dApp operator, to pay gas fees on your behalf and then charge you in another token, such as an ERC20 token that you already hold, making interacting with the network much simpler. Another addition is batching, which lets you combine multiple actions into a single transaction. For example, instead of separately approving a token for a DEX and then making the trade, you can now do both in one go. Then there's also privilege de-escalation, which adds subkeys to wallets. These give you more control by allowing you to set specific permissions. For example, you could create a subkey to limit spending to a set amount per day, or restrict it to only spending ERC20 tokens, but not ETH. Pectra also introduces significant changes for Ethereum validators, with updates like EIP 7002, which make withdrawals much more flexible, and EIP 7251, which raises the maximum effective balance for validators from 32 ETH to 2048 ETH. Previously, each validator was capped at 32 ETH for its effective balance. If you wanted to stake more than that, you had to set up multiple validators, each with its own cryptographic keys and participation in the network. Since they were often operated by the same entity, they didn't add to decentralization, but they still increased the total validator count. This meant more P2P messages, more signatures to process, and more strain on the network's bandwidth and computational resources. But with EIP 7251, the maximum effective balance is now 2048 ETH. This lets stakers consolidate their funds into fewer validators. For example, instead of needing to run 2 validators for 64 ETH, a staker can now use 1 validator to manage the same amount of funds and still earn rewards on the full balance. For large staking operators, it simplifies operations by reducing the number of validators they need to manage, which also lowers the network's overhead in terms of messages and signatures. On top of that, EIP 6110 made onboarding new validators much faster. What used to take up to 12 hours can now be completed in approximately 13 minutes. Finally, the upgrade also features EIP 2935, which is an important prerequisite for the introduction of Verkle Trees. We won't dive into the technical details here, but Verkle Trees are essentially data structures that are more compact and efficient, thus increasing scalability. Now, this is necessary for Ethereum's future as the network moves toward stateless clients, which are simply nodes that don't store the entire blockchain. Stateless clients rely on these compact proofs to verify transactions and blocks without holding all the data themselves. Those are some of the major changes introduced in the first part of the Pectra upgrade, but there's still more to look forward to. After this phase, updates like EIP 7692 will focus on improving how smart contracts are structured and executed, while EIP 7594 will enhance layer 2 solutions to process transactions more efficiently. Looking even further ahead, like 2030 ahead, Ethereum's consensus layer could undergo a complete redesign. At last year's DEF CON, Ethereum researcher Justin Drake proposed replacing the beacon chain with a more advanced system called the
Beam Chain.
This new system aims to reduce the staking requirement from 32 ETH to just 1 ETH, encouraging broader participation. It also promises faster block finality to improve transaction speeds and plans to integrate cryptographic techniques like zero-knowledge proofs to strengthen security. Well, those are some of the key developments happening right now and planned for the future in Ethereum's ecosystem. So what's your take? Are you bullish on Ethereum in 2025?